mirror, tell me what do you see? A person climbing to the absolute peak. Don't need excuses, cause you are not weak. So chin up and be the very best you can be. Hero, you are a hero. 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 You've been a great one, still is what you're made of. You've been the same one ever since day one. You are a hero. You are a hero. You are a hero. You are a hero.
I call it From Sea to Shining Sea. I just made that up, but I thought it was a good one. We're going to talk about the captaincy today and talk about leadership in so many ways. So, when you think about leadership, there's all kinds of different leaders. There's the brash, take no prisoners leaders. There's the quiet, I'll do my talking on the ice leaders. And there's every configuration in between, but they all wore the C on their chest for their NHL team. Yvon Cournoyer, many of you have already seen him there, and it's a real special treat to have Yvon drop into our laps in a most wonderful way too. And he took the mantle of the captaincy, which is so important in Montreal, as we all know. Rick Vaive, we said hello to him just a few moments ago, and Rick started his career with Vancouver, but again, the part that we know as far as the captaincy goes was his time with the Toronto Maple Leafs, where he not only wore the C, but scored 50 goals or more in a season, 3 consecutive years, and definitely deserves to hear the accolades of friends and fans as well. And last but not least, we're really, really pleased to have Scott Mellanby with us as well. Born with DNA of leadership in his DNA in many ways, and that's a nod to his family. But Scott was a captain on 2 occasions, once with the Florida Panthers and once with the Atlanta Thrashers as well. So we welcome our esteemed panelists today and thank them all for spending a little bit of time with us today. We'll start with Yvon and talk to Yvon Cournoyer and a little bit about his captaincy with the Montreal Canadiens. So Yvon joins the National Hockey League in 63-64, but really flourishes a couple of years later. And what a team. I mean, what a team. A dynasty and through the 60s, although that's often forgotten about, but certainly through the 1970s again. And Yvon becomes the captain 1975-76. Preceded by a couple of pretty good captains. Henri Richard immediately before him, and Jean Beliveau when Yvon was just coming into the league as well. So Yvon, I want to throw it back to you right now and talk about it. First of all, how did you find out that you were going to be captain of the Canadiens?
Well, one morning, Scotty Bowman said, our coach, he said, well, we're going to vote for a captain this morning. And I don't know about the captain who are here tonight, but I would like to know if they were named by the team or the players vote for the captain. And our captain always been choosing by the team. Okay. So we vote and we know exactly who is the captain. And I have a good teacher like Jean Beliveau and Henry, but I was dressing beside Jean almost of my career, and he was 13 years older than me. So the respect was always there. But Jean was a great winner, and it's because of the older guy. They show us how to win. I mean, but I realized why was the captain before? The captain was to speak to the referee. That was the only guy who was able to speak to the referee. That's why we have 2 assistants and a captain. But I think after a while, the captain be more responsible, not just to speak to the referee, but for the team. And I always said the team is first. It's nice to be the captain of the Montreal Canadiens, but you're going to play for the team first. If you don't win, you came very upset, and so the captain is very important for a team. to make sure that the team is first and the captain is second, but you make sure you try to have win.
Wonderful. Well, I mentioned the different kinds of captains. We talked about Mr. Beliveau. We talked about Mr. Richard. And we'll include you in the conversation too, as well, Yvon. 3 different kinds of people, not I'll use the Marc Messier example, but not somebody who's going to run through a wall for you, but at the same point, wonderful leaders. What did you glean from Mr. Beliveau and Mr. Richard that you were able to bring into the captaincy of the Canadiens, Yvon?
Well, it's the determination.
Yeah.
And, I always said in 67, we lost against Toronto. And we did respect them. We have a young team, and we thought we were going to be better and win the Stanley Cup again against Toronto Maple Leaf. But that was a good, maybe a good thing for us to be able to win more Stanley Cup and respect the other team we're going to play against. And that's why I'm always be afraid after that. I mean, that was a good lesson for us. And after that, it's helped us to win more Stanley Cup, maybe.
We talk about the Stanley Cup. We joked about hoisting them and working on your shoulder. 10 Stanley Cup championships. But most notably, the 4 years that you were the captain, you won 4 Stanley Cup championships. Yvon, tell us about the thrill of not only winning the Stanley Cup, it doesn't ever become old hat, I'm sure, but of being the captain and being the person who was handed the Stanley Cup representing your team.
Well, it's the captain received the cup, but we're all there.
Right.
I mean, they're all taller than me anyway, so the cup is much higher to them than me. So, but, it's nice to be the captain, but it's nice to win. Like I said before, we need everybody. We need the Gilles Lupien. We need Pierre Bouchard. We need Rajbero, Tremblay, and we need Guy Lafleur a little bit. He's not too bad either. But, you have to have a good coach. You have to have a good organization. Everybody's got to be good if you win the Stanley Cup. So we work together, and that's why we win so many times. Maybe we have to respect the other team.
Yeah. Part of the role of being the captain is being the emissary, being the representative of the players, and dealing with the management staff as well, the coaching staff as well. You referred to Scotty. I hope it's not delicate that Scotty's sitting right here as well, but tell me about your relationship with Scotty through your Stanley Cup years.
Well, we'll make him easy for him. We just have the best team, so he could do whatever he wanted. So, but it's not hard. One year we lost 10 games, and we said nobody's going to beat that. It's impossible. The next year we lost 8 games. So what is going to say to us at the end? He doesn't know what to say to us anymore to keep winning. So I think he did well because we win anyway. So, but what? You're talking about the captain and Jean Beliveau. For me, I miss him every day.
Yeah.
And when Jean was the captain, named captain, he said, "You know what? I'm your captain during the season, but I'm your captain during the summer too. If you have a problem, call me, and I'm sure I'm going to be there for you guys." And and when you heard that, and you're talking beside the guys, and Jean always called me his son because I was 13 years younger, and he was say, "Okay, son, let's go to bed now. It's late enough now." So, and I roamed a little bit with Jean, quite a bit. So, for me, he was my idol as a captain to follow up.
Yeah, it just the anniversary of his passing just a week or so ago. That was so sad, but he had a glorious life and certainly well regarded right now. Well, in seasons where you were so strong, almost unbeatable, there had to be a few challenges that maybe you faced, guys needing to talk to somebody with a little bit more experience and with the C on your chest. Maybe they took you into their confidence. Did you run into some challenges along the way, Yvon?
I think so. I think especially when you lose a couple of games, I was waiting to go on the road and have a meeting with not Scotty, no coach, just the players.
Right.
And this is the best way to talk. You know, if you have, because the season is so quick, you don't have to have too much meeting, especially when you're on the road. And I like to have a meeting with the guys and say the truth, why I was losing, or what can we do to win again. So I think you cannot wait. If somebody has something to say it now, and let's talk about it, and continue to, I think, to play the game and try to win.
Very good. You know, the very final season, you were suffering some back injuries, and it ended your career prematurely as well. You still got a chance to be the captain of the Stanley Cup champion team that year, but there had to be a real personal disappointment in many ways. Did you know that it was your final game at that point, Yvon, or did that come a little bit later on?
Well, I think that my problem was the first operation. I waited too long to say I was hurt. I thought I pulled a muscle in the leg, and that was a cyst who came out, but I didn't know. So I waited to get at the hospital in a wheelchair, and after the first operation, and I waited another year to come back. But after the second operation, the doctor always told me, he said, I think it's going to be hard for you to come back because, you know, so I try, you know, so I said, if Scotty is retiring from Montreal Canadiens, I'm going to do the same thing. So, but I tried to come back, but I could not survive. And I tried.
For a guy who's, I mean, certainly your stick handling, your shots were terrific, but you were so known for your speed and, of course, the nickname the Road Runner as well. An outstanding career, 10 Stanley Cup championships. Hard to choose one, I'm sure, but was there a highlight that you can isolate for us, Yvon? Tell us a little bit about maybe the highlight of your playing career, captain or not.
Well, I think it's, first of all, you have to make the team of the Montreal Canadiens when you're young, and you dream to win the Stanley Cup. And when you make the team, and you think you work very hard to make the team, but you got to work harder to stay on the team. And because they show you how to win. The old guys like Jean Henry, Claude Provost, Backstrom, you know, Ferguson. And but you know, winning the Stanley Cup is what you dream about when you're a kid. And winning 10 times, and sometimes they ask me, what you like better, win the Stanley Cup or win the 72 series? I said, well, if you have both, it's not bad.
That's for sure. I wanted to move into that 72 series too. I mean, that was part of your career, and you know, you played with some great players, as we talked about. You know, Claude Provost and Audrey and Jean-Guy Talbot. You know, all these wonderful players. 72 was different because you're taking in essence, rather, the cream of all of the teams across the National Hockey League at that time. You know, it was a time where fraternization was starting to dissolve a little bit, but you still were enemies in many ways until you got on the ice together. But did you learn some lessons during the Summit Series that you could bring back to the Montreal Canadiens, Yvon?
Well, especially after the first game, that was a good lesson. Yeah. I mean, we said, what the hell happened here?
Yeah.
But we were not ready. We were had a bad information. And I think that for me, I always say the second game was one of the most important game. If we were to lose that game, after losing 7-3 the first game, I think we were to have a difficulty to come back.
40 seconds left on the penalty. Up the center ice, Clark over the right side. Arnoyer coming right in. He shoots. Score! Arnoyer!
But we win that game in Toronto. And after, I think we tied the third game in, I think it was
Winnipeg. Yeah.
And so, but I was feeling better if we go on the road. And if we were to go from Canada to Russia and start a series again, I think we would have lost. Because I find it's harder to adjust ourselves to a big rink than to a big rink to a small rink. So we have a chance to go to Sweden and play 2 or 3 exhibition games and that's allowed us to adjust on the rink. And like that, we feel a little bit better when we went to Russia. But what happened.
Oh, right in front of the net. Esposito banged that. Here's another shot by Cournoyer. He scores! Canada has tied it up. And I believe it's Ivan Cournoyer who gets the goal.
And we worked hard enough to come back, and we were so lucky to win at the end.
Yeah, you sure were. After your playing career, Vaughn, what did you do following that, and what are you doing these days?
Well, I'm an ambassador for the Montreal Canadiens.
Right.
I still go to the Bell Center. It's my second home. I feel great when see the guys, and I think we have 4 or 5 captains tonight, and I'm sure they all have an alumni, and we have a pretty good alumni, and it's nice to see all the guys who play for us. We're a big family.
Yeah.
And if you play for the Montreal Canadiens, no matter your name or what you did, you're with us, and you're going to be with us all your life.
Thank you. Rick, thank you for joining us today as well. And I mentioned your book just a moment ago, and it was a really, it was a candid read, which was a really nice situation. We'll come back to the book in a few moments' time, but I want to talk about your playing career. And I want to start on the professional level anyway, with talking about the World Hockey Association and joining the Birmingham Bulls as one of the baby Bulls. Tell us about that year, if you will, please.
Well, I mean, it was a fun year, actually. And it was, I had played 2 years in Sherbrooke prior to that, and I had another year left, but I had the opportunity to go to WHA and basically play against men and professionals. And I thought that perhaps that would better equip me to move on to the NHL, or maybe perhaps even stay in the WHA. I didn't know what would happen after that year. So It was a decision I made that I thought would make me a better hockey player.
And I'm sure that's true, because all of a sudden you're playing, as you said, with men and guys who had been in the league for some time. The league, I was going to say it folds. I guess in essence it did, but it 4 teams then joined the National Hockey League for the 1979-80 season. You joined the Vancouver Canucks at that point, but midway through the season, you get traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So talk about that, Rick, if you will, about stepping into the National Hockey League, a dream for virtually every boy and girl across the country. And then partway through the season, as you're getting yourself situated, finding your groove, you're on your way across the country and playing with the Maple Leafs, who I'm guessing you probably watched on TV a great deal through the years as well.
Yeah, I did. I watched them growing up, and unfortunately, my father was from Gatineau, so he was a Montreal Canadiens fan, Yvonne, and but I was a Leaf fan, and I had to be careful around him. I had to pretend that I wasn't a Leaf fan, so. So anyway, we watched a lot of Montreal-Toronto battles and over the years, and of course I got to watch all the greats that played for the Montreal Canadiens, and unfortunately watched them win that Stanley Cup all those years, which unfortunately I didn't get to do. But no, it was tough. It was and it just was a situation where Harry Neal was our coach and was kind of filling in as GM because Jake Milford was sick and hospitalized at the time. And, he thought I was out of shape and a few other things. I ended up sitting in the press box, and then the next thing you know, I get traded, and a million things are bouncing around in your head, and you're wondering, gosh, can I play in this league? Can I, have a sustainable career? And those sorts of things. But I get to Toronto, and they basically said, listen, you and Billy are going to get a great opportunity to play here. You're going to play a lot. You're going to play with good players, and just go out and do your job. And, that's all you ever want to hear, is that we're going to give you a great opportunity. And then it's up to you as a player to go out and grab a hold of that and take advantage of it. And we certainly did.
Yeah, you certainly did. It was a tumultuous time. There's no doubt about it. And Punch Imlach was having his personal feud with Darryl Sittler, and so many of Sittler's friends and former teammates from whether it be Toronto or London back in the junior days were being sent all over the place. So just around that time, one of Darryl's friends, Tiger, along with Jerry Butler, gets sent to Vancouver for you and Bill Derlego, who you referenced a moment ago. A lot of the trades were not particularly good trades. This particular trade helped both squads, but it certainly helped the Toronto Maple Leafs in good measure because you guys, meshed together so lovely and went on. So amidst all the hubris that was going on at that particular time, there were some bright spots too. 3 of those seasons were 50-goal seasons.
Derlego working from the point. What is he going to do with it? He's weaving his way in. Over the box. He scores! Number 50! What a play by Derlego, and Vive was there to finish it off, and he's going to get the standing ovation. Goal number 50. They get him the puck. What a setup. What a setup by Billy Derlego. Just beautiful.
If you would discuss with us those 50-plus goal seasons, breaking a record in franchise history, something that had never been done before, has only been done a couple of times since. How that was accomplished amidst all the things that were going on, and your feelings at that time of setting these particular records.
Well, I mean, first of all, I had a good centerman. I had Bill Derlego for kind of half of those 3 50-goal seasons, and Dan Daoust for the other half. And both of them were good players that worked hard. Were very good at getting the puck to me in open areas, and it was great. I mean, I can't sit here and say it wasn't great to do that, but as Yvonne said, you play to win the Stanley Cup, and unfortunately during those, I don't know what circus times is what I call them, with Barnum, Bailey, Harold running it, and unfortunately we didn't have a whole lot of team success, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that Harold was pretty cheap, and he wouldn't hire good general managers and good coaches that could lead us in the direction that we needed to go. We drafted good players, we had good players, we just didn't have somebody to grab a hold of the rudder and steer us in the right direction.
Yeah. Dave Keon had left the team on a bad note. Darryl Sittler, obviously, as part of the ongoing circus that you referenced, ended on a bad note. His time with the team as well, their captaincies as well. You are awarded the captaincy at quite a young age, and all of a sudden you've got a team that's, as you mentioned, the circus, but you've got a veteran-laden team in many ways. You've got a lot of really young guys who are being thrust into the spotlight as well. You're thrust into the spotlight as the captain. I'm just going to go back to the question we asked of Yvonne, because he reminded me that everybody gets it a different way. But how did you become the captain? How did you find out about being the captain? And talk about being a very young player who's all of a sudden given the C in one of Toronto's largest markets. Canada's
probably much.
Sorry.
Yeah, probably much different than most places where they would probably management or the team would vote or management would call you in and say, we'd like you to be our captain, and then they'd give you a little bit of time to think about it. Harold just came to me one day and said, you're our captain. And I'm sitting here and I'm 22 years old, and we've got a fairly old team. And I'm thinking, holy cow, like, how am I going to do this? I mean, I knew I wasn't ready at 22 years old. I thought I needed a couple more years in the league. But at the same time, I'm looking at Harold and I'm thinking, but if I say no to him, he's going to trade me, which he more than likely would have. Yeah. And I love Toronto, and I didn't want to leave. And so I took it. And fortunately for me, I had Boreas Salming sitting right beside me, who was a big help to me throughout that first year. Always had my back. And then when all of a sudden we got to be a little bit younger the following year, so then it became a little bit easier. So it was kind of an unorthodox way, of appointing your captain, but that was Harold's circus, and he wanted to be the ringleader, and so he did.
Well, I mean, the
And
circuit,
that's not to say, sorry, Kevin,
yeah,
that's not to say that it wasn't a great honor.
of course.
And I was humbled to be the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. But the way it was done, I wish it had been done in a different way.
Right. Understood. The circus wasn't just on the ice. I mean, it was also in the coaching ranks too. So the very first season that you're in Toronto, I better check my notes here, but Dick Duff, Floyd Smith, Joe Crozier, Punch Imlach all spent time behind the bench with you. As time went on, Joe Crozier was the guy, and Mike Nicolak is the general manager. I guess Nicolak is the coach as well, and Jerry McNamara is the general manager. Again, part of your role as the captain is to be the emissary, is to be the representative of all the players. But you've got this rotating role of coach in there as well. Talk about your relationships with the coach, being delicate if we can. Some of them would have been very good, I'm sure. Some maybe not quite so good. But that was part of your role wearing the C.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I had any bad relationships with any of the coaches. I mean, maybe we didn't see eye to eye on everything, but I never had bad relationships. But the situation I was in, I couldn't go and talk to them about things on behalf of the players because the coaches weren't going to listen to me or bring anything to the general manager. I couldn't go talk to the general manager either. And it was just kind of a situation where, I was, the players always said, well, can you talk to so-and-so about that? I mean, and I couldn't because they weren't listening. And I tried a couple of times. Nobody wanted to hear it, the coaches or the general manager. And they didn't care what we thought. It was, they ran the team the way they thought it should have been run, and they weren't going to listen to what the players had to say. And that's basically what I was told in no uncertain terms.
How difficult was it, or maybe it was a benefit, let's ask that way as well, to have Dan Maloney, who had been a teammate early on, later on become your coach as well? Was that a good thing, or was that a little difficult thing? Because he went from being a pal, and I don't know if it was a pal, but a colleague, to all of a sudden having a different role within the team.
Well, I think it was good at the beginning, and then I think by the end of it probably fell apart. If that was a good analogy to use, I guess. And Dan was a nice guy, and but I think he was under a great amount of pressure as a coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and in his last year, we finally kind of started to gel and come together, and we had a decent playoff. And then all of a sudden, he wanted a new contract, and they wouldn't give him any more than 1 year. So off he went to Winnipeg. So, we were just kind of starting to look like maybe we were turning the tide, and then Dan's gone, and then then Broth takes over, and I had 5 coaches, with the exception of Dick Duff, who coached 2 games in 7 years. I mean, that's very difficult to kind of have success when you have a revolving door of coaches like that over that amount of time.
I'll come back to that in a second, but next thing we know, you've had this wonderful run as an individual, and also being captain of the team, and there was a unceremonious ending, but you get traded to the Chicago Blackhawks. Blessing in disguise, or were you terribly disappointed to be leaving Toronto at that point, Rick?
I was terribly disappointed. I didn't see it coming. I had heard, rumors and so on, as you always do when you're playing. I loved Toronto. I really did, and I didn't want to leave. And I found out at a golf tournament up in Collingwood, the Telemedia golf tournament that they have every year at the end of August or early September, and found out after the golf tournament. So I had to go home because training camp was in 3 days. So I had to get to Chicago within the next 3 days. And, I was pretty disappointed. I really was. I wanted to stay there. I saw some potential in the lineup that we had. And I knew that, the other thing, and, I know it's kind of bad to say, but I knew that Harold wasn't going to be there all that much longer, and somebody else would take over, and maybe things would turn. So I was bitterly disappointed that I got traded, but you have to go on, and so I loaded up the car with everything I could possibly get in there. I didn't see my wife and my son until October. And I had to buy a house while she was trying to sell the one in Toronto. It's quite a bit different than it is today, I would imagine. But you know what? You get through those things. You know what? If you're good enough and you can get to the National Hockey League, and I always consider myself fairly tough mentally, and I went there and did the best I could in Chicago. I had one great year, and then again, another coach comes in, and then all of a sudden I can't play anymore, and I get shipped off to Buffalo. So, I mean, it's like, whatever. I mean, I'm not blaming anybody. Some of it was on me. Some of it was my mistakes that happened and that led to certain things. And, and some of them were out of my control. And you can't control everything. You just go out every day and every night that you play and give 100% and hope that's good enough.
To wear the exalted C of the Toronto Maple Leafs is quite an honor, and one that will always be with you. What lessons from being a captain did you take into your life after hockey? You coached at different levels through the years as well, and maybe in your professional life beyond hockey as well, Rick. Were there any lessons that you learned that you were able to adapt to your life?
I think communication. I learned to communicate. One of the things that I wasn't a guy that stood up and yelled and screamed or anything. I like to lead by example first and foremost. But secondly, I learned a lot about communication. I mean, there was times where instead of getting up and saying something, I would maybe invite one of my teammates for lunch or just, go over and sit beside him and talk to him. And just maybe because he wasn't performing the way he could, he wasn't maybe giving 100%. I would just kind of quietly do it one-on-one and instead of doing it in front of all his teammates. And so that kind of served me very well moving forward as a coach, as I learned to communicate very well with my teammates. I did so with the players that I coached as well. And I loved every minute of coaching. And then obviously beyond that, coming back to Toronto and, being involved with the Leaf alumni and doing a lot of things with MLSE's corporate partners and different appearances and alumni games. I'm still playing alumni games at my age, and I love it. And so communication is very, very important, and meeting people and being nice to people and making, and sometimes making their day by taking the time to spend a little bit of time talking to them and signing an autograph or something like that.
You're a great ambassador for the game and certainly for the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. Earlier on, I alluded to the fact that there's a great book out there, and I've really enjoyed it. And just to reiterate, it's called Catch-22, My Battles in Hockey and Life. Scott Morrison was your author or your co-author on that book as well. Scott, if you'd join us as well, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the experience of working with Rick, pulling the stories out, good, bad, and indifferent, to put together a best-selling book.
Here's the cover.
There we go.
And it makes a lovely Christmas gift.
It sure does.
That picture was only about 38 or 40 years old. I'm not sure.
Well,
okay, that's all right.
All our hair color changed during that time. But, Kevin, and you've been through the process of writing books. It was Rick and I go back, obviously, I covered him during his time with the Leafs and the 13 years in the National Hockey League. And at various points, we talked about telling his story. And, it never got to that serious stage. And then, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, Ricky, we met for a coffee, and we almost looked at it as maybe being a big magazine story, that type of thing, when magazines still existed, I guess, which how our world has changed. And anyway, just a year or two ago that my employment situation changed and my time changed, and we'd still been talking, and the publisher, Random House Canada, who I've been working with, were looking for some ideas, and I threw Ricky's story by him, and we had a chance to talk before that. And one of the key things was Rick brought it up and I brought it up, and once I knew that the two of us were on the same page, I knew this could be really special, is that he wanted to be honest and tell his whole story. There was no sugarcoating. There was no hiding anything. It was, I'm going to own everything, good, bad, and indifferent. And I said, then if you're willing to do that, I'm totally on side, and we can make this a really good project. So, and to his credit, and when you think about, it's easy to say it's easy to do that, but when you think about talking about the blemishes in all of our lives, if you had to do a life story, that's not an easy thing to do. And not to be a braggart as well. Like, he never got over the top saying, look at me, world. And he never got faded away from saying, I made some mistakes. And so I tip my hat to him. It was a fabulous experience to do. It was, books are a hard, as you all know, books are not an easy experience because you put a lot of time and a lot of effort into them. But it was a fabulous experience because it wasn't a battle. It was having a conversation with him. We did so many days of chatting and recording and transcribing, but he never resisted being honest about anything. So I tip my hat to him. I really do. And the one beautiful thing, Kevin, that's coming out of this is that in all the reviews that we've seen from various media people and book critics and all the rest, is that they've all said, wow, you are honest. And to me, that is the highest praise.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely candid. In fact, you think you know a player quite well, and you read the press that comes out of Toronto specifically, just because it's such a big market. Pardon me. So you think you know them fairly well. Rick has been part of our Road Hockey to Conquer Cancer event a number of times. Got to know him fairly well that way as well. And yet when you read, you find out things that you had no idea. And the candor is something that you really look for in a book too. And it was really nice to read that, and how you were able to get past certain things that were challenges and move on with your life in a most positive way. So inspirational as well as a great read too. So yeah, great job.
And I would say too, Kevin, is that, and Scotty as a coach would know, and Yvonne as a player would know, and Scott Mellanby, is that this guy had a hell of a career.
Oh yeah.
That has somewhat been overshadowed. Why, I'm not sure. That decade of the Leafs was not a great one, even though they had some tremendous players. But he had a hell of a career battling through a lot of things. And hopefully that's one thing people glean from this book, is that of the all-time Leafs, he was one of the all-time great ones.
Without question. We hope that someday we see that banner hanging from the rafters of Scotiabank Arena. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So very good. Thank you, Scott. Rick, thanks a million for joining us. What are you up to these days, Rick? You mentioned being an ambassador for the team and working with MLSE as well. You're in Niagara-on-the-Lake now. Am I correct?
Niagara Falls, yeah.
Oh.
And of course, we're not doing anything right now.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm in a real good place in my life right now, Kevin. We have a grandson, our first grandchild, who's 16 months old. In fact, we're going there. My wife's going there tomorrow because my son and his wife have to go to a funeral in Kingston, unfortunately, and I'm going to join her later on in the afternoon after I play a round of golf indoors with three of my buddies, and I'm going to spend the rest of the day with my grandson, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm in a real, I don't even know how to describe it. I'm just at peace with everything right now, and my life is, I've never felt better in my life as I do right now.
Wonderful. Well done. Well done. Well, Scott Mellanby, we've talked about guys who played a little bit earlier than you did, but you joined, well, you shouldn't say you joined, but you were drafted by the Flyers in 1984. But before that, I mean, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation with the gang here before we started the program, was you had leadership in your DNA when you think about your family, mom and dad, your sister. So you already had the leadership ability within you, and you showed it a little bit later on as time went on. You joined the Flyers in 1985, 86, just for a couple of games, but became full-time the next season. And here you are with the Flyers, and what a team you had. I mean, you're looking at guys, Dave Poulin's the captain and a terrific veteran as well. Mark Howe, who'd certainly done great things through the years and had the same kind of DNA that you did. Brad Marsh, Brian Propp. There was so many guys. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Flyers for a minute. Not just your personal successes, but what you were able to pull out of watching the way these guys compose themselves, and what lessons you learned from them that you were able to take into various parts of your later career, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think especially back then, at that time, some of the things in hockey were kind of just starting to evolve with some of the training and nutrition and some of those types of things. And certainly in Philadelphia, they were very progressive in those types of things. But I mean, I remember, coming out of college and walking into the Flyers dressing room for the first time. And the first guy he beelined across the room was Dave Poulin. And it was a bit of an awkward, coming out of college hockey back then was a bit of a different route. So, I feel extremely fortunate to have started an organization that had great leadership, was a successful team at the time. So the expectations on winning and being a good pro every day were there. And like you said, Brad Marsh, Brad McCrimmon, Dave Poulin, Dave Brown Dave Brown was a fighter and wasn't a guy that is thought of as, but Dave Brown was an outstanding leader.
Well, let's talk about the leadership on the management side of things as well. We mentioned Bobby Clarke, who actually came into your life a little bit later too, but Bobby Clarke is a GM who'd been a captain before with the Flyers, and also Mike Keenan, who certainly has a reputation as a certain kind of coach as well. But tell us about your relationship with the management of the team during your Flyers years as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. I mean, Clarkie was just out of playing, so he would come down before games and walk around the room with some tobacco in his mouth and look at the guys' sticks and flex their sticks. I think he still wanted to play, but for a young guy to have him be around like that, and he was a guy that was in my corner from the start as far as a player. So obviously had a great deal of respect for Clarkie and what he had accomplished, and he was great. Treated me great. Mike was hard on me. I went into a team, out of college that had played in the Cup Finals in '85, and he was going to make me earn every inch of what I, was going to get. I think having really good strength of leadership and teammates around me was great. But I've been asked about Mike a lot over the years, and one thing I can say about Mike is everything that Mike did with any player, he was doing it to win, and he was doing it to make the team better. And he pushed me like he pushed guys like Rick Tocchet because he knew we would respond. He knew that if he pushed us, we were going to go out and run somebody over or do something that was going to, he knew that he was pushing us to be better, and he knew that guys that didn't respond to that, he just left them alone because he couldn't get another level from them. And Scotty knows that better than anybody. As a coach, you know your players and what they have inside of them, and the guys that are going to maybe change the dynamic of a game for your team. So Mike was really hard on me as a rookie. Ronnie Hextall and I were rookies together, and Ronnie was winning Rookie of the Month every month in the NHL. So I was the guy that was getting the boots put to him. But it was everything Mike did was all about trying to get us to win.
Very good. Well, speaking of winning, May 1991, you get traded. You've been established now as a star in the league, good power forward. May 91, you get traded to the Edmonton Oilers, who are coming off their own dynasty years. I mean, certainly in the mid 80s with Gretzky and the boys. A little bit of a surprise when Gretzky had left, but still were able to win the Stanley Cup with guys like Mark Messier. Different kinds of personalities on the team. You had guys like Kevin Lowe, who certainly a Hall of Famer now, but who was a captain as well. Craig McTavish, who was a captain as well. Ted Green as a coach, and Glenn Sather as a general manager. So a whole different set of personalities now that you're able to draw from. Talk about your Edmonton Oilers years before we get into your captaincy years, if you don't mind, Craig.
Well, Mark, I went in the year after they won the Cup with Messi as the captain. He got traded the first training camp I was there, and Kevin Lowe became the captain. And Kevin Lowe, I'll tell you, I have so much respect for Kevin. When I played with Kevin in Edmonton, we would in practice, you'd have your battle drills in the corners and stuff. And Kevin Lowe, you came out of the corner with the puck in practice, and you beat him somehow. You had a red mark on your arm or across your ankle or whatever. And I looked at this guy going like, man, this guy's already won 5 Stanley Cups. And that's how hard he's competing. So, Kevin for me was, I didn't know him very well, only from playing against him, but going back to what, and if it's okay, if I can take this on a tangent a little bit, because I want to make a couple of comments on what the previous guys talked about, when Yvonne talked about the competitiveness, Kevin had that in spades. And I think that's what, drives great players to be great, makes good players, above average, and above average players great is that day-to-day passion to be great. But, just to touch on, Yvonne had mentioned about, and I think he's left the conversation, but he asked about, being voted on as a captain or being chosen by a management or coach. I experienced both. So when I was in Florida, it was a vote by the team. And then when I was in Atlanta, Bob Hartley made me the captain, him and Don Waddell. I was older at that time, and we had guys like Kovalchuk and Hossa and Mark Savard that were young. And I think they wanted an older guy to come in there to kind of try to show them, how to be a good pro. But the one thing, going back to what Yvonne said was, even though I was chosen by the management to be the captain, I remember my first time I addressed the team, that what I said to the guys was that, hey guys, I want to make one thing clear, and that is that I'm your captain first. And you will see in time that, if there's going to be things that we need to deal with, positive, negative, whatever, I'm going to come to you with it. I'm not going to be going to the manager and saying, hey, this is going on, or this, we're going to deal with things internally. And I think the point of it is that I think, you have to have trust first before you can lead. And I think that's something that Yvonne was kind of getting at, was that, your teammates need to believe in you and trust you to be able to then maybe give them a hard message. But I agree with what Rick said earlier. I think that there's, a lot made sometimes about leadership and big speeches, and a guy grabbed a guy and threw him up against the wall to get him to play. And I think that's a little bit blown out of proportion. I think there are moments in history where there are great speeches, but I think that a good captain, has that ability to know, when a hard message has got to be delivered, but also to be able to identify that, like Rick said, whether it's taking a guy out to lunch or identifying that maybe something's off with his family or his kid or his relationship. And there's different reasons that guys go into slumps or what have you. And I think that natural leaders have a feel for the people around them and are able to, like I said, sometimes guys need to be patted on the back and told them as a teammate that you love them, not always kicked in the ass. They need that too. But I do think that the most really good leaders, and I'd be interested to hear Scotty's view on this, but most guys I think are more lead by example and then know the couple of times of the year, a few times of the year where something has to be said in the room. You
have to gauge the situation, and it sounds like you did exactly that. Well, let me just step back for a second.
I would think.
the expansion of '93, having to populate a brand new team, a brand new franchise, and you get chosen by the Florida Panthers. All of a sudden, you're surrounded by players who, are looking to make their mark in the National Hockey League, maybe have played for a little bit, but maybe didn't fit into a team, or maybe they just were expendable at that particular time. But you had something to prove at that point, and you become the captain of the Florida Panthers. Maybe you can talk about how things gelled over the next little while, to the point where, as we talked about with Scotty earlier, into the third year, you go to the Stanley Cup final, unprecedented. And we'll talk about that specific incident in the next few minutes.
Yeah, well, Bob Clarke and Bill Torrey, I think, were focused on bringing in a lot of character. We had 7 or 8 guys that could have been the captain. Brian Screwdlin was actually the first captain in Florida. I was the second captain.
Okay.
I was an assistant captain right off the bat, but we had so many guys that were kind of in that 26, 27, 28 year old range that were really just really good pros, and there were a lot of guys that could have been captain. I think that's the great thing for any team too, is when you end up having, it's great to have a good captain, but having a group of players that can kind of be a leadership group, when you have that going for you. And again, I'll refer back to Scotty, but when you've got a group of leaders in the room that can kind of make the room function properly, you're really in business. So yeah, we had a lot of character. We had a lot of guys with a lot of pride, and for whatever reason, that team just from the start, Roger Nielsen did a tremendous job. We didn't have a lot of star players, and everybody bought into what he was selling. I'll tell you just a quick story. Our first practice, our first year with Roger, he brought us all in, and I think he wanted to break the ice. So everyone convened around. We're on the ice. He said, "Okay, guys, got our first drill here of the year. First drill. I need 3 or 4 skill guys. I need 2 or 3 skill guys. 2 or 3. I need 1 or 2. Well, forget that drill. We'll do another drill." It was kind of setting the tone that we didn't have a lot of skill on that team, but everybody bought into what Roger was selling.
It's a great story. Well, speaking of great stories, when people hear the name Scott Mellanby, of course, there's one story that has preceded you all the way along, or followed you all the way along, and that's the rat story as well. Relate the story to us, if you don't mind, about the famous rat story with the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, well, I wish we were talking about my 10 Stanley Cups, but unfortunately, you have to be known for something, I guess. But yeah, it was actually the year we ended up going to the finals, so it kind of became this big deal. But it was our home opener, and we kind of we ended up in the Miami Arena, not as the primary tenant. The Miami Heat were there, and Mickey Arison and Wayne Huizenga were not friends, so they built this little drywalled. There was like 3 rooms. Our dressing room was about the size of a big bedroom. It wasn't real big, but and down in that area, it was a rough area, and there was certainly not the cleanest area, but there were rats around the building and this and that. And this rat came beelining down the hall and into our dressing room. And I just remember Paul Laws, who was one of the toughest guys I ever played with. I just remember him jumping up on the the stalls that we sat on and stuff, because he was scared of this thing. But I think I was too, but it just stopped and beelined right for me. And I didn't have a very good one-timer. Probably was the best one I shot my whole life, because I was scared, and I hammered the thing. It went about 10 feet, hit the wall. And that game I got 2 goals and we won. It was our home opener. And John Van Beesbroek actually said to the media, he said, "Oh, Mellanby got a rat trick." And he kind of told the story. And that's how it got out in the media. And then as the year went along and the team, we ended up going to the finals that year. They just kind of snowballed and got to the point where you saw what happened. So yeah, it was crazy.
Well, we did, and certainly the rats being thrown on the ice was a great deal. But one of the neat things, we talk about making lemonade out of lemons, and you did the same with the whole rat story as well. Maybe you can talk about how you were able to take the whole rat incident and make it a positive for the community.
Well, we didn't really have to. Like I said, it's just, I think the fans really just got crazy about it. I remember in the finals, I remember during the playoffs that year, I remember it was the finals, but they made an announcement at the Miami Arena, and they said anybody caught throwing anything on the ice can be kicked out. And we had a video. They showed a video of it the next day. And what it was Marty and Wayne Huizenga used to sit behind the net at the one end. So while they're making this announcement, Marty Huizenga, God rest her soul, and Wayne's, they both passed now, but they showed Marty Huizenga was on the Jumbotron with a big bag of rats like this, jumping up and down, throwing them on the ice. Well, this announcement's being made that you're going to get kicked out of the building. So it's like, well, I don't think they're kicking Marty Huizenga out of the building.
Front back on, but not yet controlled by Shepard. Over to Straka. It's Shepard. It's gone!
This is the Avalanche's first look at the Rats. My goodness.
Well, this is the heaviest.
Oh.
They added more staff for this game tonight. 25 people are out there gathering them in. The strangest thing they said they've picked up in these playoffs has been a box of Decon, which is a rat killer. They actually did have, as you will have with any spontaneous thing, somebody who actually turned loose a real one out there, and they very carefully got it coaxed into one of the buckets that they use.
Yeah, the people just embraced it. And, as a father now of 3 and gone through a journey as a parent, one of the greatest things that ever happened to me since then was probably about, maybe 10 years ago. I had a guy come up to me, and obviously this is back before they had flat screen TVs, more expensive flat screen TVs. But a guy came up to me and he said, "Thank you so much for what you guys did in '96. We were living in Miami and we couldn't afford to go to any games." But he said, me and my 3 kids that were all under the age of 6 at the time, he said, we used to sit there and we had a bag of rats and they would throw their rats at the TV. So he would score and they'd throw the rats at the TV. So, and he was really kind of almost emotional about it. And now, being a parent at that time, 10 years ago, it really was touching to hear somebody say that you realize that these people, the fans had that kind of connection to that whole thing.
And the Panthers are going to win this game as he gets in and scores as time expires. And the Rats come raining down here at the Bank Atlantic Center in Sunrise.
Wow. Shades of '96.
And the Panthers salute the home crowd as they sweep away some plastic rats, which date back to that memorable run in '96 from the old Miami Arena, which had its share of rats. One killed by Scott Mellanby in the Panther locker room. That became the theme of that season as they made it all the way to the finals.
Yeah, they sure did.
Kevin, if I can interrupt.
Of course.
I covered that '96 final with Colorado, Florida, and this is down in my sports room. One of the rats that was thrown on the ice that night.
Yeah.
On the final game. So there you go.
I can see some thumbprint.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was in the conference finals or finals with 4 of the 5 franchises I played with, so I'm proud of that. But I will say that having not won a cup as a player is a huge void for me personally. It's like Yvonne said, and it's what we play for, and would have given my whole life to the game, and it's given me a lot. So I hope that cup is still in the making.
Wouldn't that be nice one day? Well, you spent some time with St. Louis for sure, but we're going to jump ahead to playing with Atlanta. You get signed by the Atlanta Thrashers, and this is where, if you'll excuse my error earlier, this is where you were the inaugural captain for the franchise. And again, you've got a young team, a growing team, Bob Hartley behind the bench, but you've got guys like Keith Tkachuk on the team, Bobby Holik, yourself as well. Talk about that team, if you will, and again, pulling people together and being the captain of that franchise.
Yeah. Actually, I was 37, I think, at the time when I signed with Atlanta. Actually, I was not the inaugural captain. They started in '99, 2000, or something like that.
Fair enough.
Like I said, they had some good young players with Kovalchuk, and Savard was there. Marian Hossa, who Scotty knows well, who was tremendous. What a pro this guy is or was. And I think Larry Plow in St. Louis was not going to bring me back. I thought I was done playing, to be honest with you. I could barely skate anymore. But I think that Don Waddell, from talking to Larry, talked about my leadership abilities, and I think Don wanted to have an older player around that. Actually, Danny Heatley was still there, but we traded Heatley for post in training camp. I think they just wanted veteran presence that had been in the finals and been around and had a good reputation to come down there. And so kind of my goal going down there was to help this franchise get in the playoffs for the first time. They never had been. I was there for 2 years. We missed the playoffs the last day of the season, my first year, and then our next year we did make the playoffs. It was the only time the Thrashers ever made the playoffs. But it was a great experience. I would have liked to gone out, the way some guys, get to carry that mug around the ice their last game. But I felt very respected by management and the organization and by my teammates. And like I said, I thought I was Donnie Waddell actually asked me to come back for another year. And I said, Don, I can't play. Have you watched me play? I'm done. I can't play anymore. And he just was worried about the room.
Following your career, you moved into different areas, but now working with the Montreal Canadiens. Tell us about how that took place and what your role is with the Canadiens now.
Yeah, so when I got done playing, I took a year off, moved back to St. Louis and wanted to just spend some time, with family and stuff. And then I ended up going and being a pro scout for the Vancouver Canucks for 2 years, which was good experience. And then I got to know Doug Armstrong a little bit, and I was living in St. Louis. He asked me if I wanted to coach. I thought coaching was going to be my path, to be honest with you. When I was playing at the end of my playing career, I thought I would coach, but I did enjoy the management side of it, and I coached for a couple of years in St. Louis, 1 year with Ken Hitchcock, and I really enjoyed the scouting and the management side of it a lot. For different reasons. You put your skates on every day for 20 years as a player, and then you go and you're going to the rink every day. I just found that tough. Some guys love it. Kirk Muller's in there's lots of examples. You love it, but if you don't love it, it's you just can't do it. And so Mark Bergevin, who's my boss now in Montreal, I had played with in St. Louis, and he asked me if I wanted to. Him and I had stayed in touch. He was working in Chicago, won the cup there with them the 1 year in 2011 or 12, something like that. But he asked me if I wanted. So we were in touch, and he said, "Do you want to get back to this side of it?" I said, "Yes, I do." So he had just got the job in Montreal, so he hired me as director of player personnel. And a couple of years later, I became AGM, and I've been assistant general manager there for the last, 7 years now, and the last 2 years I'm running our team in Laval as well, which has been a great experience. And I like where we're at. We've got some good young kids coming. We've got some good older players, and I like what we were able to get done this summer. And I like our team. I like our minor league team too, for sure.
I asked this question of Rick Vaive a few moments ago, but I'll ask the same question of you. What were the lessons that you learned as a player, but more importantly as a captain, that you're able to bring to the role of AGM with the Montreal Canadiens?
Well, I think being a captain is just you're in a leadership role, so you're dealing with teammates, you're dealing with management, you're dealing with coaches, you're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of different ages. I think as a captain, one of my strengths, I wish I was a better player, because when you have a great player who's a great leader, you can win the Stanley Cup. When your best players are your best leaders, there's a lot of guys that are not, and there are third and fourth line guys that are great leaders. But I think that as a player, I played every role in my career, from fourth line fighter to first line scorer and everywhere in between. So I think that my ability to kind of assimilate through, and I've done a lot of the jobs now on this side of it. I've played, I've coached, I've scouted, I've been in management now. So I think just, being well-rounded and being able to understand what the way things are the dynamics are supposed to flow. And I think that I have a hard side to me, but I also have a very compassionate side to me as well. And I think that is important when you're in a leadership role, that you're able to, deal with people's problems.
Yeah, very much so. Rick Vaive, I'm going to come back to you just for a moment, if you don't mind. I'm going to ask you about your role models, not necessarily just as a captain, but as a person. Were there players? Were there people involved in your life from a young age, whatever, who made a great impact on you and helped put you in the situation where you could take on the captaincy of a major National Hockey League team?
I would have to say probably my grandmother. I found myself at my grandmother's a lot during my time. I lived in Charlottetown, and of course my uncle, who was her youngest and son, was handicapped and blind from birth, and he loved music. But my grandmother was a wonderful woman, and I don't think she had a bad day in her life, or if she did, she certainly didn't show it. And she dealt with a heck of a lot. And I don't know, I wanted to be like her so much, like just be, happy and kind of get through things. And she was through a lot, trust me. And but I was able to kind of get a little bit of her into me, and she taught me a lot of good things, and I had a blast going there and playing records for my uncle and singing with him, and how, for me, that was, I guess through them, it helped me get through a lot of things that I got through in my life because of, watching them and them overcoming things that they had to. And for me, that was probably, they were probably two of the most important people in my life.
It's a great story. Wonderful. How about you, Scott? How about you? Did you have some people, a person who played a great role on influencing your life, both as a person and as a hockey player?
Yeah, it's interesting. Rick would, obviously look to family. And I think, and I'm not just saying this because my dad is on the air, but I think my parents, to be honest, and I didn't know this at the time. It's not like you consciously, you're young, you're growing up, you don't consciously think of these things. And I've been lucky to be around a lot of good people, but I think that both of my parents in different ways, I think that the kind of people they are, as far as compassionate, like I've always said, my mother was the most selfless person I ever knew. It was about the people around her, her family, the sacrifices, just the caring that was there. And the one term that I use about my dad a lot is I call him an everyman, and I'm not even sure I know the true definition of that, but my dad is someone that I think I'm the same. That my father with Hockey Night in Canada has had a drink with or broken bread with Bobby Orr and Wayne Gretzky and the greats, but the amount of times that I walked through rinks in the NHL after games, and I had cameramen and floor sweeps and people that did the behind the scenes work. It's one of the most things I'm most proud of, is the amount of people that were not stars that would go out of their way to ask about him. And they would always say, "Oh, how's Rob?" And then, "Oh, he was so good to me. Oh, he was so good to me." So I think the way that, whether you're Bobby Orr or Bobby the cameraman, for him, it was like, if you want to sit and have a drink with him at the bar, he's going to be there, But I think that is something that for me is just, it's something that's natural. I think it's something that has allowed me to be a good leader, is because I think people trust me. I think they see a genuineness in the way I deal with situations or with people. It's not something that I try to do. It's just who you are. And I think I get that from them.
Very nice. Great. Both great answers. Wonderful to hear. So every team has got different parameters, different rules, unwritten rules, I guess. But I guess I'll start with you, Rick. Did you have official functions with the team? And then did you put together unofficial functions, whether they be parties or meetings on any kind of a regular basis or ad hoc basis with the Toronto Maple Leafs when you wore the C in Toronto?
Well, I wouldn't say on a regular basis, but there was certain times of the year where right around Halloween, we used to go to a farm out in, well, at that time it was in Mississauga, believe it or not, because there was farmland in Mississauga. Not now. And we used to have a band, and they had brought in caterers, prime rib, and great meal, entertainment. Sometimes it'd be costumes, sometimes it wouldn't be, and all the players, and we encouraged everybody to bring guests. And so I met a lot of different people at that barn party every year, and and then there was times where it was just like, okay, it's time we go for lunch, which was mostly on the road because everybody wanted to get home to their families and so on. And there was times where on the road you just say, yeah, we're going here, and I want everybody to go there, and we're just gonna stay for a little bit, and that was more just to get everybody together and talk. And because I remember one time when Harold Ballard canceled the charters halfway through one season because the flight attendant wouldn't let him have a chocolate bar, and believe it or not, that's true. And so the rest of the season we flew commercial, and we had guys like Freacher, Inachek, and a few other guys from Europe that came over to play with us, and there was players from all over the place, different places in Canada and the U.S. And I don't think we really knew each other well enough. And I think when he canceled those charters, in fact, the second half of that regular season, we were the fourth best team in the National Hockey League, and I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that we were staying on the road after games. We'd go out together as an entire team. We got to know one another better. And I think that developed a real good trust between us, which I think if you don't have trust with your teammates, you're not going to be successful. And, getting to know Miroslav and Peter and all those guys, and them getting to know us, it bonded us, and it formed a trust between all of us. And, that's why we were the fourth best team in the league in the second half.
So important, and somebody's got to put that together, clashing of cultures and trying to bring everybody together to be a team. That's a real tribute to you, Rick, as well. Scott, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Were there some formal things that you had to do, visiting hospitals, doing charity events, or going to Carlots or whatever it happened to be, but also the random things that as a captain you would have put together just to kind of bond the team, as Rick alluded to as well?
Yeah, there's always some of that stuff. I mean, I think as a team, you're always in a position where some of the charitable things that you do become part of it. Sometimes, for example, one thing when you talk about team gatherings, my wife and I in Florida, we started doing it. We did it for many years after that. And you don't have to be the captain to do this, but we would always have the young guys over for Thanksgiving.
Nice.
And my wife's a great cook, and so we would have the guys over for Thanksgiving and stuff like that. So it's just little things like that you try to do, and but I mean, it's whether it's a team gatherings or team meetings, or obviously dealing with the coaches on certain travel plans or practices, or the coach will actually come to you, and say, how do you think we feel about leaving at this time and practicing when we get in, or should we practice here? And just all kinds of little things like that end up kind of in your lap. And then of course the media. I mean, the media. It's easy to stand up in front of the media when you've had a great game and you've won, or you've had a couple of goals and you've won, or whatever. But you have to be a representative of the organization, and there's days where you have to answer questions that you lost, or you had a tough loss, or maybe you had a bad game and you lost, or whatever it is, and you've got to you've got to show the professionalism and handle it the right way. And you want to do that too for the steadiness of the team. You know what I mean? There's a steady hand that has to go along with, when you win, you got to stay steady, and when you lose, you got to stay steady and find a way to get back at it. But sometimes when you're winning and trying to turn a 3-game winning streak into 4 is just trying to keep guys' feet on the ground, because guys can, they start flipping the puck up in the air and doing all kinds of crap with their practice. And it's like most great players practice great.
Very good. Yeah, very good. Great stuff. Well, we've all seen wonderful captains through the years, watching some great hockey. I don't know that anybody on this particular call has seen as many hockey games and dealt with as many captains as Scotty Bowman. Scotty, maybe if you don't mind, can you unmute yourself and talk about some of the captains that you've seen, worked with, been impressed with through the years as well?
Sure. I got about 7 minutes because I got to watch a hockey game on TV.
Fair enough. Drive them up.
It's a college game, and the Hawks drafted a player, and I gotta watch him again. No, yeah, the captaincy, like it's the guys mentioned, it's quite an honor, and I was always pretty close to the captaincy. I was fortunate. My start in St. Louis, he was a year older than me, and the late Al Arbor was our captain, and he had been an assistant coach with Rochester the year before when we drafted him from Toronto. So Al was he is well ingrained in what players should do. He meant so much to that early going, and of course, his later career coaching the Islanders for nearly 20 years and so successful. But in Montreal, Henri Richard, when I got there, he had just been named captain. We had to vote, and he was voted easily. Jean Beliveau had just retired, and then he was with us, I think, 3 seasons, and then Yvan took over, and they had been with the team, like you mentioned. I'm glad somebody mentioned that group of players in the 60s. Even in the book that Ken wrote with us, we didn't pick that dynasty, and it was a dynasty because Yvan mentioned to it. They won, and Sam Pollock would be the person that I was fortunate to work with, because he took over the Canadiens in 1964. And he stayed till 78. He left the year before I did. He went into business with the Brofman brothers. But Sam was a wonderful man, and Yvan started the same, I guess, just the year before that Sam took over. But Sam Pollock, they won in 64, 65, and then they or 65, 66. They missed in 67, the one that Yvan referred to. They came back and won again in 68, 69. So that team won. They would have won 5 in a row if they could have got by that Toronto team in 67. But Henri and Yvan were established players, and that was pretty easy for coach going in there. And then after Yvan got injured the last year, Serge Savard took over, and he had great chemistry with Yvan. They had played together since 67 or 68. So, and then the one that I really spent a lot of time with, as you get older, you change a lot, was Steve Yzerman. And the admiration I had for Steve was we had a team, we had an owner that would spend any amount of money to win. And I always know how much Mike Ellich meant to that team. And, we would make trades during the season with Kenny Holland was the GM after we won the first cup, and he was well deserving because he had scouted all those players. But he brought in captains from other teams. I mean, Chris Chelios, guys like that. I mean, Brendan Shanahan. And it was a seamless transition because he was very quiet, but he had a good ear for the players. I ran nearly everything by Steve. I was there for 9 years as coach, and if anything I wanted to do that might be a little different or might have some questions about it, I would always say, Steve, what do you think? This is what I'd like to do. Maybe change the travel, like late in the season instead of going. We always used to go in the mid-afternoon. Why don't we go? It's only a short trip. Would it be okay if we leave at 8:00? And I things like that. So I ran everything by him, and the captain means a lot to the team. But I think somebody mentioned there's an inner group of players that are really crucial. And say back in St. Louis, we had Glenn Hall and Red Berenson and Al Arbor and Jimmy Roberts. They had experience in the NHL. So, every time that we want to do something, I think it's important for the coach, if he's going to have things to do, things to change, run it by a few. And the captain will tell you he wants support. So, when I look at the teams we had, like Montreal, we had players that were there before I got there, and we had some young players coming in. We had Lafleur and Steve Shutt, Larry Robinson, Bob Gainey. They came in a little bit after, but they became real core players. And I had a core of about 6 or 7 players. And you make some when you're a coach or you're a captain, there's some tough decisions to make. I mean, you can't demand the respect. You have to earn it. And I remember a couple of tough decisions I have to make, and I bring this group of players in. Of course, it's easy when you're successful, I know, to get along, but a couple of times I brought something up, and right away a couple of them would say, well, why did you do it? Why can't we do it this way, And some of the teammates would say, I remember one time, Bob Gainey, I was in a bit of a discussion with Serge and Larry about something. I don't know what it was at this time. And I was trying to explain it, and they kept saying things, and Bob and Ivan said, "Look, let him talk. He's the coach, So there has to be a real genuine interest by all the leadership group, and they'll pass it on to the rest of the team, because everything doesn't go smooth all the time, and you have to make the final decision. But if you can get the support of the captain first and his core players, because I was lucky, and then I went to Pittsburgh, and what a lucky charm that was, because Mario was, we all know how great a player Mario was, but he was very quiet as a captain. But, we had Ronnie Francis and we had Brian Trottier, and they had so much success in the league, and they had been, I think he'd been a captain at Hartford, and Brian was, I don't know if he was even captain in New York. I guess he was close to it, but when you get a captain like that, you'd be crazy for any coach not to adhere to what they've been through it. So I think that's the most important thing I took on it. And I just wanted to mention one story about Ivan that you guys would get a kick out of. I was with St. Louis, and he had been in about maybe his 4th or 5th season, but he was so fast at that time. When you thought his nickname was the Roadrunner.
Canadians dump over on the right side of Cournoyer. Cournoyer cutting in front. He scores! Cournoyer with great speed. De Tremblay jusqu'à Cournoyer. Il s'en va au but. Et casse!
Le but du Canadien compté par Yvan Cournoyer. Canadian goal scored by Yvan Cournoyer.
Jusqu'à Cournoyer, il s'en va droit au but, il est seul. Et c'est le but! Yvan Cournoyer.
And in those days, when we expanded, the coaches, the 12 coaches, were the rules committee. And I remember going in. I don't know who proposed the rule change, but in that era, when the center line was really tough to get by. And somebody brought up a rule, a potential rule, and had to be voted on. They said they wanted to say when the puck went over the center line, even if you weren't behind the blue line, as long as you were behind the center line when the puck crossed it, then you could be onside to go and get it. That was a big change, because before you had to be behind the blue line, and all of a sudden, before it went to a vote, somebody. I didn't bring the rule up. I think it was Montreal that wanted this rule change to open up the game. Maybe it was even Clarence Campbell. And all of a sudden, about 3 or 4 of the other teams said, "Oh, you're only putting that rule in." And I was with St. Louis. Montreal, you want to put that rule in, the same as you did when you changed the power play rule a decade ago. You want to put it in because of Cournoyer. They didn't put the rule in because of one player, but there was other players on teams that were fast too. But he had such acceleration, Ivan, when he was in his prime, and the puck went up the ice, and he was on his wing. When he took off, it's sort of like in today's game. I mean, he's a different kind of player, but the way Connor McDavid can accelerate, you never want to get in a foot race with Yvan Cournoyer. And he's a wonderful guy, and he was. And what I admired the most about him as a captain, it wasn't easy, because all of a sudden, as he took over captain, Guy Lafleur was starting to lead the league in scoring, and we all know what kind of a player. I think he was the player of the 70s. But Yvan, he didn't even bat an eyelash. If you're running the team, he's going to be the franchise at which we had good players, anyways. But Yvan was an ultra team player, and he admitted what he thinks. He got it from Jean Beliveau. I mean, obviously, and Henri Richard, but Jean was that kind of a captain for 10 years. So I have a lot of admiration for those kind of captains. And like Scott had mentioned, and Rick, it's a big job. It comes across as it's a responsibility. So I enjoyed what they said about the job, because at times I'm sure they had tough decisions to make, but you're the captain, and I'm glad that Scott mentioned it. When you're the captain, you're not the captain for the coach or the manager or the team. You're the captain for the players, and I think as long as the captain does that, he's gonna make a good captain.
What great insight! Thank you very, very much, Scotty. That's great stuff. So listen, this has been outstanding. From sea to shining sea, the captaincy. This is your captain speaking, whatever we're going to call it. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, all of our spectators and certainly our panelists. I definitely really want to thank Yvan Cournoyer, who's not here right now, but what a pleasant surprise that was to have him joining us too. Rick Vaive and his cohort, Scott Morrison, for Rick for telling us about the role during the circus, as you say, but also being able to circumvent that and have an outstanding career, and Scott being able to capture much of the story of Rick's legacy in the wonderful new book Catch-22. Want to thank you both, and also to Scott Mellanby, one of our younger captains on this panel anyway, but adding some wonderful insight into the game, a couple of franchises where you wore the C, and being able to take your dad's legacy and being able to put it on the ice and show up and do such a great job. And we wish you all great success with the Montreal Canadiens. So thank you to our panelists. You were outstanding tonight, and really, to open your lives and to give us your time is really something that we appreciate very, very much. So thank you for that.